Hi, everybody. It's Jim. Thanks for joining me. I want to do a quick impressionistic review of this monster of a book, The Recognitions by William Gaddis. It was originally published in March of 1955, and it is a real monster. It is like a spaghetti prose, multiple thread mosaic of a book. I don't even know what I think about it, but I'm going to do my best to share my quick impressions having just finished it a few minutes ago. Okay, where do we start when we're talking about the recognitions? I think this is widely regarded as a milestone, a landmark work in American postmodern fiction. It's very modernistic, but I think, this is post-war American fiction, 1955, and this is more on the postmodern edge of the spectrum. I really do think that's a fair assessment. This book took me at least 2 years to read. I don't even remember when I started it. It was quite a while ago. And I would just read it off and on. It was a slog to get through. It is very opaque, and yet, as you'll find by the end of this review, I'm not going to entirely disparage this book. I didn't hate the book. I just have mixed feelings about it. And to help me make sense of the book, because a lot of the time I didn't really know what was going on. It was very hard to follow all the characters and their trajectories. I'm going to rely on an outside source. And I found a pretty good website called Grokpedia. I don't know much about Grokpedia, but they actually have a good page about the recognitions. There's also another page about the recognitions that this Grokpedia page leans on pretty heavily, and I will link to both of those in the show description if you want to get a better inkling of what this book is about and how it's been received. But I'm going to start not with plot so much. We're going to talk a little bit more about style and technique and what makes this book postmodern. So I'm just going to lean here on another source, which I think is kind of fitting given a lot of the themes in this book, as you're about to find out. So the narrative structure of the book is characterized by its experimental form. It eschews a conventional linear plot, and that is certainly true, in favor of a fragmented encyclopedic mosaic. I like the word choice, mosaic. I think that's a fair way to put it. That spans approximately 30 years and multiple locations. A lot of the novel, especially in the middle part, take place in New York around Christmas time, but you also have locations in Boston and Paris and Spain and rural New England and Italy, and voyaging by sea through the Mediterranean and across the Atlantic. It moves around. Central America is actually in there too. So it's sprawling, but in a lot of ways, most of the book takes place in New York City. And the novel is divided into 3 parts, massive parts. The middle section is by far the most expansive part, roughly twice the length of the first 2 parts. And that middle section is dominated by a lot of what Grokpedia calls panoramic party scenes. These are like little set pieces. And they depict also scenes of urban chaos in New York City. And the 3-part structure is sort of like a triptych, which is sort of true to some of the art themes in the book. The book is filled with art history themes. And but at the core, and I'm not going to get into the plot because truly I don't understand the whole plot, but at the core, it does follow, we could call him the protagonist, character by the name of Wyatt Guion, his journey from aspiring painter to forger and then exile. So this artist becomes a forger of old masters' paintings That's kind of like at the middle of all this. But this is complicated by the intersection of that plot with over 50 characters and many subplots involving these characters. It is confusing to the max. Like, it is really sprawling, mosaic spaghetti threads. Like, it's, yeah, a real head scratcher. But anyway, themes that you're going to come across frequently in this novel would be themes about plagiarism, counterfeiting, cons, artistic imitation, the mimetic, right? Originality and authenticity versus imitation. So it's very much a novel about authenticity. And can we even use that word anymore in modern society? I think in a lot of ways this book is prescient and sort of foretells what was going to happen in the culture in the subsequent decades. Remember, this was, 55 it came out? And so it's a very fragmented, shifting type of text. Yes, it has elements of the Bildungsroman genre as we trace through Wyatt's life, but it also has lots of digressions about art, art history, and it's a very dialogue-heavy book, The Recognitions, and there's not a ton of third-person narration. It's a roving narrator, and it's an omniscient narrator, I would say. But you have monologues and dialogues, and it's kind of like almost like a cinema verite type of collage of voices that are clashing throughout the book. And Gaddis is really good. He has a great ear for dialogue. And you can distinguish characters by the way they talk. But the problem is there's so many characters. And another problem is the way he writes the dialogue. So he uses like the dash style. He doesn't put things in quotes. And sometimes in the middle of a paragraph, like characters' voices will switch. Sometimes he'll say, so-and-so said, but very rarely. So you really have to, concentrate to just sort through who's talking to who, and then there'll be like overheard things, like especially in these set pieces like the party scenes, and these are great pastiches or satires on literary culture in New York City, among other places. But like you have the intelligentsia, then you have like the bohemian scene, there's a party scene, one or more with those, and like this cacophony of voices that's sort of like ping-ponging, pinballing, like all through these scenes. It makes for a slog. I'm not going to lie to you. There are influences from James Joyce's Ulysses in here. There's influences from T.S. Eliot's poetry, like the Four Quartets and the Wasteland and things like that. But another statement that Grokkapedia comes up with that I want to share with you, which I thought was a pretty good point, was this. They say the overall form treats the novel as an encyclopedic representation of mid-20th century cultural entropy, incorporating allusions to art, religion, science, and multiple languages to fragment any singular authoritative voice and underscore the theme of forgery as inevitable repetition. That is well said. Critics have noted its Joycean density and satirical edge, with early perceptions of formlessness giving way to appreciation for how the structure's complexity enforces active reader engagement, much like Wyatt's quest for artistic redemption and imitation. That's pretty well said. You can see the echoes of Joyce here, but he's not really imitating Joyce. This has a very different flavor from James Joyce's Ulysses. It's not as hard to read as Finnegan's Wake. I mean, that Finnegan's Wake's just way out there. Like you can kind of if you work hard enough, you can follow through what's going on in this book. It's just very, very challenging. The satire is there, and at times it's very, very funny. There's a sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure if William Gaddis was a misanthrope, but there's parts in here that sort of have that flavor too, which goes along with the satire. The language is very dense. It's a labyrinthine type of text. It uses non-chronological structures, recurring motifs. Recognitions is a big theme. Originality, the fragment, imitation, counterfeits, forgery, fakery. We live in a fake age, like where everything seems to be just a construct and fake and imitation of an imitation of an imitation going all the way down. So that is really the flavor of this entire book. And it's multilingual. So you've got, Latin, Italian, German, a lot of Spanish, written in English, obviously. I even think Hungarian's in there and German and sort of pastiche, sort of made up languages. But, it's not maybe to the extent that Joyce does it, but it's there. And it's a kind of a gnarly book. It's clotted, it's knotted, sclerotic. It's just sort of, you'll get very sort of careful, close description of what characters are doing and how they're moving about in the space. But then it's like interjected with all this dialogue where you don't know who the heck's talking. And it's just a lot of balls being juggled in the air. I do think there's a method to the madness. And some of these secondary sources, like you can find online, might be very helpful in that regard. So the novel does use a lot of pastiche. It uses a lot of repetition. It's kind of imitative, true to the themes. And but it's very original, it's this kind of this weird amalgam of influences, and as they put it here in Grokkapedia, excessive verbiage in urban scenes laden with numerical details mimics sensory overload and alienation in New York, while repetitive phrasing across sections evokes stagnation in settings like Paris. And it's a very encyclopedic, sprawling, vast book. It is a chunker, the recognitions. So, yeah, and let's just very briefly talk about reception history, and I'll give some final impressions. This book didn't sell very well when it came out. People didn't really know what to make of it. It went out of print for a while. It got a lot of bad reviews, and yet its defenders were very staunch and valiant and persistent in trying to revive its reputation. And it has become a novel that's more talked about than read. And I think that's probably true for all of William Gaddis's books. He won the National Book Award, I think, twice, not for this book. This book was kind of a dud initially, but once he won the National Book Award, I think he won it for J.R. and then one other book, people were reassessing, the earlier book, and it's now back in print. This particular edition is published by Dalkey Archive. I found it new at a bookstore many, many, many years ago. I might have even bought it at Borders. Remember Borders bookstore? Like that dates me, but that's probably when I got it. And it's been on the shelf for a while, one of those sort of intimidating tomes that you're not sure, like, should I really go there? Well, I finally went there and I survived to tell the tale and share it with you. there's an introduction in this book by William Gass, another challenging American author, and I'll talk about him another time. But he has a good introduction to it. You know, he sort of honestly talks about how difficult the book is to read, and talks about Gaddis's reputation and the sort of the mystique around the book. But this is a novel that is a heavy lift, to be sure. There's no doubt about it. It's a high degree of difficulty, and I was relieved to finally finish it. I plowed through the last 100 pages this morning, and you know, I get that way with a long book. I get to that last 100 to 200 pages, and I'm like, I'm just going to finish the damn thing. So let's go for it. You know, that final ascent to the summit, and I don't know what to say about it. It's a confusing book, and yet these themes of the fake, counterfeit culture, the commoditization of culture, you know, it's a savage critique of sort of like the art market and things like that. Remind me a little bit of, what was that? There was a film, I think Donald Sutherland was in it, maybe, I forget who. I want to say six degrees of separation, but I don't even know if I'm in the ballpark on that. But it was just this film that came out about 20, 30 years ago that was kind of about like the sort of inside con jobs that like the fine art market indulges in. It reminded me a little bit of that. And I also felt like this book was in a weird way cinematic, even though this would probably be impossible to film. Like I can't imagine a director like touching this with a 10-foot pole. But it's cinematic in the sense of like you have these kind of ensemble set pieces, and I don't know if anyone's made this connection before, and again, I don't watch as many films as I ought to, but there were moments when it reminded me of Federico Fellini's films. It anticipates some of his films, like La Dolce Vita or 8½, films like that, which are kind of sprawling works, and there's a carnivalesque quality to them, and these also some of like the religious themes are sort of like modern life sort of juxtaposed against what's left of religious iconography and religious culture that sort of like still lingers on. There's a lot of that in this book too, a lot of Catholicism and Protestantism in this book, and so much Western culture and history and art is talked about. It's very intertextual. You know, so if you're really reading this seriously, you're going to have to, you know, be looking stuff up, and that would probably enhance your appreciation of it. I never do that when I read a novel for the first time. No, almost never. But it kind of had this little Fellini vibe, you know, like sort of like there's scenes in La Dolce Vita, for instance, like there was a scene where like the intelligentsia in Rome, and they're having like a dinner party and they're all chatting, and Fellini's kind of like satirizing them to some degree, and it's a really, really good scene. Like that's kind of the feel you get from some of the scenes and the recognitions, and you know, in many other respects it's not like Fellini at all, but there are some parallels to there. But I almost felt like Gaddis was almost like seeing, like his narrative posture was kind of like seeing as a director would see, and not having an intrusive narrator who's going to explain and tell you a whole lot. He's just going to show it to you or let you listen in, and there you are as a reader. You got to figure it out on your own. So it's a challenging book. So would I recommend this book? Well, I don't know you, whoever's watching this. Uh, I I can't say, oh, everyone should read this book. I think this is a book you should like research a little bit up front, read about it, get a taste, see if it's that kind of thing for you. I mean, here's what I would say. If you like other postmodern style fiction that's on the sprawling end of the prose spectrum, such as Thomas Pynchon or David Foster Wallace, Infinite Jest, a book I haven't dared to read yet. I think I got like a little bit into it. I gave up on it. Those types of writers. Yeah, you might. That's this book probably up your alley. Even some of Don DeLillo, like I'll bring like DeLillo. Sometimes often writes shorter novels, but his one sprawling chunker was Underworld. And he's a postmodern American writer too. So if you liked Underworld, you like Pynchon, you like David Foster Wallace, you're probably primed to appreciate a book like this. If that's not your cup of tea, you might want to stay away from the recognitions. You might want to try another book by William Gaddis. And the other question I have is, do I keep this book? And I think I will. I think I will. Like as hard of a slog as it was, I'm not going to lie, it was tough. I feel like there was something there. I really like that theme of authenticity and imitation versus reality, and this notion, which I'm not sure I fully grasp, but I think based on my Grokkopedia page, that the book is trying to tell us that it's really almost impossible to be original anymore. And is there a way to like reclaim authenticity by way of this sort of postmodern appropriation of the imitative? And at the same time, the book like seems to be highly critical of like the fake everything culture. So I don't think it's exactly celebrating that, but it's problematic. Well, I like problematic books. I like thorny subjects like that. So there's a lot to chew on here, and I'm certain that if I revisited this book, and I actually might reread it someday, I would get so much more out of it because I would have a better inkling of like what the book is, where it's headed. And I think I'd be able to keep the characters a lot straighter. That happened when I reread Ulysses. It happened when I reread Finnegan's Wake. And it's certainly what I think would happen if I reread The Recognitions. So, and I also have a lot of respect for writers who go there. They reach for something that hasn't quite been grasped before, even if they fail in the attempt. And in some ways, I think the book maybe is a failure, but in other regards, that attempt is worthwhile. And, you know, this is not fast food. This is something much more complex. And I do think there's a there for sure. It's just, he's going to make you work to find where it is, where we're at. That is my quick sum up, some quick impressions of the Recognitions by William Gaddis. I feel like I'm in select company. How many people haven't finished this book? I would love to hear from other people who've made it through the Recognitions. What are your thoughts? Have I missed anything? Are there dimensions that you want to open up for the commentariat? Let me know your thoughts. I think I might have JR by William Gaddis. I seem to remember we have a copy somewhere here in the house. And I would be willing absolutely to read another William Gaddis book. And I know we have at least one other book by him too. But JR would probably be the next one I would like to read. So, you know, as hard as this was, I wasn't completely put off by William Gaddis. He is like a majorly smart, nuanced, deep complex, ambitious, challenging writer. And sometimes it's good to have those kind of challenges in our reading life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Ask questions, leave comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.